Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Jeremy Parvin here. As you know, I've created a passive income stream of rental income of $50,000 a month with a real estate portfolio worth $6.5 million, and I've done all this while working a full-time job. And on my channel, I'm going to tell you how you can do it too. I also talk about other investments, retirement planning, and all things money. I also do one-on-one coaching calls in case you get stuck, and I'm working on some online courses.
Oh, I would like to say, although I am a licensed CPA and I have 3 business degrees, I'm just a guy on YouTube with my dog. I recommend that you always contact your professionals before making any investment decisions.
I recently did a video on why 2021 may be the best year in your lifetime to buy real estate. And then my last video was on how to get started buying your first rental property. So in this video, I'm going to cover some basic landlording items for new landlords. Things like how to find good tenants, credit and background checks, leases, how much do you charge for your rental, preparing your rental, how to collect rent, and how to do all these things in an efficient way so that you can continue working your full-time job. For those of you who know Lily, she is back and she has fully recovered from falling off the bed last week. We were worried we were going to have to x-ray her leg, but she is fine. We're very excited about reaching 200 subscribers and we're working on getting our first 1,000. She wanted to remind everybody that she's giving a pair of Apple AirPod Pros to one of our first 1,000 subscribers, so please continue to share this with your friends or anyone you think may find this interesting. And thank you for liking and commenting as well. That helps with the YouTube algorithm so other people can see this material. Thank you. So let's get into it. Basically, with landlording, I recommend keeping it very simple, but do make things scalable so that when you add more units, it's just as easy to do 2 or 3 or 4 houses as it is to do 1. So property maintenance. A lot of new investors end up doing all of their maintenance and improvements. I did that. I would encourage you though to, as soon as you can afford to get some help, look on Facebook Marketplace, search for the word Handyman, and maybe call and interview a couple of them. I recommend having them work with you, and maybe you can get things done a little quicker and you can kind of help them do things, but you'll learn a lot from it. It'll help to offset some of the costs if you can work with them, and that might be a good way to get into getting someone else to do the work instead of you. I do recommend trying to not do the handyman work, the repair work, and the remodel work yourself as quickly as you can afford not to do that. I constantly ask myself, why can't I delegate this? And any and everything that I can, I try to do so. So when you're preparing your property, clean sells. You can't sell a dirty car, right? So just fresh paint inside and out, having a really good curb appeal, putting out some fresh mulch or pine straw, straightening up the bushes, mowing the grass, and edging makes a big difference. The one big thing I'd like to suggest to new landlords is Zillow Rental Manager. You're familiar with the Zillow app and the Zillow website. Well, I have a Zillow Rental Manager, both an app and a website as well. And it's really a big one-stop shopping for landlords. Zillow is a place where you put your property information and photographs and you turn it on whenever they're available and you turn it off, and so they stay in there and you don't have to recreate them. I think over in Facebook Marketplace, I'm not real sure because I haven't used it much. I feel like you've got to create it again every time. I've also used Craigslist in the past, and like I said, I do have a website, but really focusing on Zillow Rental Manager will do probably about 95% of the stuff that you need to do getting started. So one of the things you're going to ask yourself is, how much do I rent my property for? Zillow does a great job, as you know. They call it a Zestimate, and I find that it's a pretty good estimate. Mine typically rent for more than what they suggest. There is a 1% rule that simply means whatever the house is worth, like say $100,000, if you multiply that by 1%, then you would get $1,000 rent. My portfolio averages just below 1%, or 0.85%. And so, for example, a $200,000 house would get $1,700 in that example. So I got a question from one of our subscribers, Tom in Oklahoma.
Hey Jeremy, Tom Ostasic out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, realtor and investor. This past year, I rented out my first property and came across this unique scenario. At least it was unique to me. Want to get your thoughts. I had applicants reaching out wanting to pay for an entire year upfront in full at a discounted rate. Fortunately, I had people willing to pay what I was asking, and so I never really entertained it, although thought, gosh, you know, I have that in my back pocket if I need it. What are your thoughts around that? And would you recommend somebody willing to take that, or are there concerns around somebody willing to pay for an entire year up front? Thanks for your help. Appreciate it.
So a couple things. Money is cheap. You can't get 1% interest in a savings account. So really the only benefit to you is the fact that you'll have your rent and you won't have to worry about collecting it or fool with collecting it for that matter. I would like to caution everyone that sometimes people with problems do this and they seek out properties that are owned by individuals instead of some large management companies. And they'll entice these small owners with this money and it works for them. And so be careful about that. Be sure to check them out like you would anyone else. Zillow has a background search and a credit search. And the applicants pay and they apply for your houses in Zillow. And you get to look at their credit report and you get to look at their background searches. I would certainly also call the landlord. That's one of the things I like to do with everyone. I would definitely do that with someone who wants to prepay you up front. I actually rented to someone a couple of months ago, and when I mentioned to her that I had several applicants, she offered to pay 6 months in advance, and I let her know that I would like that and that would help her as I look at the different candidates who are applying. Ultimately, I rented to her and it's been going just fine. But I didn't have to lower the rent. I just let her know it would help her chances of getting the property, which worked. Coincidentally, I had the same thing happen actually today, where a tenant is looking at a house that is not even vacant yet. The tenants are buying a house and they'll be out in a month, and so I'm already advertising for that. Their lease isn't up for about 3 months from now, and I tell them, hey, if you'll help me show it a few times and get it rented, then I will let you off the hook for the rest of your lease. I start advertising, I let people drive by first, and then I check them out, and if I like them, I have my tenant show them. So I let this recent applicant know that I was scheduling 3 other people to see the property. This particular applicant was a little bit low on the income to rent ratio, which I require 3 times the rent and income. And she responded by saying, hey, we just sold our house. We can pay a year in advance if that would help us to qualify. So I told her that would satisfy my concern for her income requirements and that I would let her continue the process of looking at the house. She never asked me to lower the rent, nor did I offer. So in today's hot market, I don't think that landlords need to accept a smaller rent if people pay in advance. I think you can probably let them know that it will increase their chances of getting your place if they do want to pay some money up front. Advertising. Again, Zillow is the only place that I advertise. It's only $9.99 for a week. The one thing I would do in addition to that is get some handwritten signs. You buy these stores at Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, wherever, and it says house for rent, and you write your phone number in it. I like to have an arrow. I put these at the house and to all the main roads going in both directions. Handwritten signs are great. I think Zillow has a lot better quality applicants than Facebook Marketplace. It also has a nice portal where you can see all the applicants and you can make notes. It also has very interesting capabilities where when you put your phone number in Zillow and your email address, it does some really smart filtering where when they try to call you, it generates a random number so they don't actually have your real cell phone number, and then it'll leave a voicemail and send it to you and you listen to it. And so if it is some kind of scam, you can press a button that says, I think, scam or archive if you don't like what they say. So for this reason, I don't think you even need to get a separate phone number starting out. When you do, I have one called Line 2, and it's an internet-based phone number, and it leaves a recording when they leave a voicemail, or you can have it ring your phone. But I'll basically receive an email, I'll listen to it, and I can even forward that voicemail to my maintenance supervisor. Oh yeah, that's one of the biggest things that people ask me about. Do you get phone calls in the middle of the night about busted water pipes? All of my tenants have my cell phone number, and I don't recall ever being called in the middle of the night by any of my tenants. I put my phone on sleep mode, and so if someone did call or text or send an email, it doesn't make any noise until I wake up. I'm sure you do the same thing. So Zillow Rental Manager does the credit and background check. Now, I'm not looking for people with perfect credit. Those are called homeowners generally. What I am looking for are evictions. I'm looking for sex crimes and maybe repossessions. I don't mind bankruptcies, but the higher the credit score, the higher I will rank the applicants that I have in my current pool for a property. Rent collection. Zillow actually has a new feature of collecting rent, and it's free for both the tenant and the landlord. And so I'm testing that out currently. One of the things I noticed is that there seemed a little lengthy delay in when you receive your money, which is not too big of a deal, but I think it was a good 5 or 8 business days, something like that. So I'm sure they're trying to make some money off that holding period. My standard method is really to have my tenants deposit the rent into my rental checking account, and I'll give them a few deposit slips to start out with, and my lease says all this, and it says the name of the bank and the account number of mine, and they're supposed to put the money in there on the 1st or by the 1st. These days I receive more rent though by other electronic means. My favorite these days is Zelle or Pay, and that's a bank-to-bank transfer. I like that because it's instant. I don't have to log on to PayPal or Venmo or Google Pay or Apple Pay, and I use all those, or Cash App, right? You have to log into those, you have to transfer the money, and you have to wait, and that's another entry or two into my QuickBooks. So with Zelle Pay, bank to bank, I don't actually have to make a separate entry, and it's instant, and there's no fees with any of these. On some of those, on Venmo and PayPal, if you're not careful, you can choose the one that'll move the money faster and it charges you. And also on all those, if you check business, it'll take out a percentage, or if you say friends and family, it's free. So just be careful with some of those things. So lease agreements. Zillow has a solution for this too. I told you they had everything, right? And so leases are state specific, and so they'll have separate ones for the states. I've not used those myself, but I've heard good things about them. I believe all that is included, by the way. And so I think that would be a great place to start. And you can always add any clauses to your leases that you want to. You can put them in plain English, which I highly recommend. A couple of things about the leases. I do recommend walking through, when you're signing a lease with a tenant, some of the highlights, some of the important parts of the lease. One of those is late fees. I definitely recommend charging late fees. I charge the standard Tennessee Landlord-Tenant Act, which is rent's due by the 1st, there's a 5-day grace period, and then there's a 10% late fee on the 6th. If a holiday or weekend falls on the 5th, you have to give them another day. And I do this in practice. I really recommend people to do this. Most small landlords don't do this based on my experience talking to my friends who are landlords. It's kind of hard to do, but when you're talking to the tenants up front, right, and setting those expectations up front, I always tell them, hey, it's due by the 1st, it's a 5-day grace period, there's a 10% late fee on the 6th, and I hate charging late fees, but I've got a mortgage on all my properties, and if I pay my payment late, you know they're going to charge me a late fee. And so if something happens, I tell them, don't make your problems my problems. Let me know ahead of time. And I tell them I won't put it in the lease, but I'll tell them this: pay as much as you possibly can by the due date, and I'll just charge 10% on the unpaid amount to save you some late fees. And that works really well. What's a good tenant? First of all, be sure not to discriminate, and I recommend that you read your state's landlord-tenant laws. One basic thing is income to rent ratio, and Zillow does a nice job of showing this at the beginning of the very top of the applicants, and it's how much income they make divided by how much the rent is. And so a basic affordability ratio is 3 times the rent as income. And so if rent is $1,000, then they need to make at least $3,000 a month in pay. And that's household income, by the way. So the higher that number is, the higher they will rank in your pool of applicants. That, along with some other factors like credit score and so on. Another thing that makes a tenant a good tenant is a long job history and a long time on their current job. The 3 things I'm really looking for when I'm looking for good tenants are people who will take good care of the place, people who will pay on time, and people who will stay a long time. Turnovers are very expensive. You usually have to paint, touch up. If there's any carpet, you're going to have to clean it, if not replace it. They are one of the most expensive elements in the operations of rental property. Fewer people are less wear and tear on a property generally. Trust your gut. If you have a weird feeling about someone, continue to look into it. If someone gives you a driver's license that's not horizontal, in my state, if it's an ID only, it'll be vertical. And that's a red flag. Check out my eviction video I did recently. Don't rent to friends or family. I heard someone say, don't hire someone that you can't fire. That sounds a little harsh. Another way to say it is, keep your business and your charity separate, or your business will become a charity. One thing I would recommend all landlords doing right off the bat is to open a separate checking account and savings account, and running all of your income and expenses through that checking account to help simplify your taxes at the end of the year. I also recommend using your bank's bill pay system to simplify things. Now, in terms of bookkeeping and record keeping, I suggest Quickbooks. However, I don't think that new landlords need to start out with Quickbooks right off the bat. I think you could get your first property and then work on getting Quickbooks within your first year. I am working on making a mini course on Quickbooks to show landlords how to set it up for them specifically. And it's so efficient. You can have a separate account for each tenant and you have it charge that tenant's account every month. And so at any point in time, you can see exactly how much they owe, when they were charged last, when they paid last. And if you charge them late fees, for example, or if they had some kind of utility fees or something else, or if you took some rent off for them fixing something, for example, you can show this very easily on their QuickBooks account. I'll collect rent and I'll generally send these out a couple of times a month. It obviously also tracks all of your expenses, and you can do it by property, which is going to be important as you get more properties. Because when you're filling out your taxes or your CPA is filling out your taxes, it's going to want you to list the rents and expenses by property. So QuickBooks is going to make this very easy for you. In addition to the taxes, you want to know which properties are making you money and which ones aren't. So do you need a website? I really don't think you do. I think Zillow is going to be enough for you. It's going to be this landing page when things are for rent. Now, it's not going to be available when they're not for rent. Later on down the road, I actually think the second thing you can move to is just a Facebook page for your rental properties. And the reason that I do like to have a homepage is so that if I know some properties are going to be coming up, but I don't want to advertise for them now because they're not ready to show or it's a little far out, I'll have them all on my website, and I even put on there when they're going to be coming available. And if I'm talking to somebody, I can refer them to that property. They can look at the photos, they can drive by, they can see it on a map. And a lot of times I have my properties lined up long before they become vacant. And that vacancy really is expensive. So a lot of people wait to do any repairs. They wait to show it and all that. I do that while someone else is in there. If they're gonna leave early, they'll generally do it for me if I let them out of their lease. If they're leaving their lease on time, I'll pay them $25 or $30 or whatever. So those are a few basic things on landlording and getting started. I do plan to make a mini course on this, going farther into my processes and procedures. I'd like to show people how I streamline a lot of my things with automation and organization, a lot on how I bill pay, how I set up QuickBooks, how I store my files and things like that. And this will help you just be more efficient with your time so that you can do this in your spare time while you work a full-time job like I do. So in summary, I'd say, keep it simple, but make everything scalable for growth. Start with Zillow, open a separate rental checking and savings account, and have fun. Let me know what questions you have in the comment section below, and also let me know what topics you'd like me to cover in future videos. I'll be making videos on rental property, investing in general, investing in the stock market, retirement, all things money, and smart homes. If you get stuck, I do one-on-one coaching calls. My favorite book for beginners is The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. I put a link in the show notes below to a list of my favorite books. Lily, just wanted to say thank you again for watching, and if you like this video, please hit the like button to help with the YouTube algorithm. Every time you like one of our videos or comment or share or hit the notification bell or subscribe, you'll be entered to win that Lily's giving away to one of our first 1,000 subscribers. So thank you again. We'll see you next time. Say bye, Lily. I post weekly, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll know when my next video is out. And I look forward to seeing you next time.